Great Monday, and welcome to the Fully Human Connections podcast. I'm your host, King, and I'm joined by my co-host, Reggie. We get getting quite a bit late started this morning and had some technical issues, but got those resolved. I tell you, it's those challenges, man, that just really get you going on Monday morning. But I go right into my gratitude moment. Before I do that, how you doing today, Reggie? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm doing well, King. It's a beautiful Monday morning here. I feel blessed to be where I'm sitting, so I'm happy to be here talking to you.
Yeah, same here. Same here. Like I said, going at the excellent segue into my gratitude, just showing that if it's not for problems keep you on your toes. Just when you assume things are going to work a certain way, then you get an example of how sometimes even the routine activities that you do can go astray, especially with technology. And that was the case this morning. But I'm thankful for my life, my health, my ability to see, hear, walk, talk, stand, breathe, and have sound mind. I'm thankful for my mother to be alive and have sound mind, and had a great weekend with her. And I'm also grateful for you having the patience to help work this through and still be of good spirit to get things going. Speaking of spirits, what's your spiritual energy number right now?
Yeah, so I'm a 10. I mean, I admit I was at a 5 until we had the technical difficulty. No, I'm just kidding. And then I just chose to boost it up to a 10. No, I've been good all morning, so I'm functioning at a 10. Yeah.
I'm at a 10 as well, so I'm glad you're at 10. So what's your gratitude moment this morning, Reggie?
Yeah, so just grateful as always for it sounds sometimes it sounds like a joke when I say this, but I really mean it. Like indoor plumbing, as the weather's getting cool here, I live in a house, I have a roof. If I want to, I can plug in an electric heater before it's time to turn the main heating unit in the house on. I have a refrigerator with food in it, and I'm just grateful for some really simple things as I look both in this country and around the world at people who don't have those things. I mean, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who lives just outside of Kiev in Ukraine, former student. I spoke with her on Thursday last week, and she's doing the best she can, but she lives in a war zone, and so I'm just grateful for all of the blessings for where I'm sitting right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I definitely feel you on that this morning, and prayers go out to your friend. So why don't you walk us into our show, and then we get a late start. We're not gonna be able to go full length, but let's get as much in as we can.
Yeah, so for folks who might be new, we've been speaking about my book, Healing America's Narratives. The subtitle is The Feminine, the Masculine, and Our Collective National Shadow. And we've been doing this for probably 14 or 15 months now. And we're going to take a turn from where we've been the last couple of months, where we've been taking a deeper dive into the elements of shadow. And we're going to make it current today by speaking about the evidence of shadow, current evidence of shadow in the current U.S. Congress, specifically, but not only in the House of Representatives. They've been in the news a lot in the last week or two, but even in the last year and change, primarily because of what I would describe as their dysfunction, where they really don't get anything done. And they've done a couple of things here and there. So I'm not making a blanket statement where they haven't passed any resolutions or laws. But for the most part, the Congress is being held hostage by 8, what even the other Republicans in the Congress refer to as MAGA Republicans, strong reporters of Donald Trump, who's facing a slew of lawsuits now, federal and local and state lawsuits, who have decided to use their positions just to attack people in their own party they don't like, and virtually everybody in the Democratic Party, including the President of the United States, mainly through his son, who is being accused of some wrongdoing. So across the board, they're manifesting elements of the things that we deny as a country. They think that they're patriots, and they're actually doing things that hurt the country. And ironically, even doing things which is rare in these partisan days, they're even doing things that continue to hurt the Republican Party. So the elements again, there's ignorance, there's arrogance, there's greed, there's bigotry, I believe. There's not personal violence, like they're not out there hurting other people specifically, but there's violence in their rhetoric. There's untrustworthiness. So I'm not going to go through the whole list, but the current state of the U.S. Congress is a great example of what led me to write the book. And even though the book is not specifically about the Congress, it's about the historical and current shadow of the United States. So I'll just pause there and let you jump in or ask a question so I don't go on a rant or more of a rant.
No, I think that's a great topic considering the climate, the political climate that we're in right now. I mean, being 54 years old now and being, I would say, politically knowledgeable and politically astute since I was maybe 20 years old, I've never seen Congress this, I would say, non-functioning, as you say, non-trusting with the public. I mean, I don't think anybody trusts Congress at all. We don't even expect Congress to get anything done. And it gets worse every term. And for me, I have to continue to go back to forced tribalism, because it's like the deeper we're in our tribes, everybody continually wants to elect someone who represents their particular interests, which is not in the best interest of the country. Because when someone gets into office, then they're going to hold their agenda. And as we see with right now with the government, threatening to shut down pretty much, and Congress kicking the can down, proverbially kicking the can down the street, I don't really see any end in sight. And then ousting, Speaker Kevin McCarthy, even though I didn't like Kevin McCarthy, but now that just makes Congress even more dysfunctional. It's like, how worse can it get? And I don't think we've reached the bottom yet. That's really the scary part. I think we're somewhere on the pathway down, and it's about to get a lot worse, and we're about to see that. And that's really the part that I find to be more frightening. So I think, with all that being said, I just think that you chose a great topic today, and you're absolutely right. It definitely displays all 9 shadow elements that I see. And you can see how there is no interest in solving the issues or creating a win-win or operating in the energy of love and how to be more fully human. It's only, I got to win, you got to lose. And as you said, that group dynamic, my group wins, your group loses. And that's how they're going to go. And then we're left as American people to be told to get out there and vote more and put more people in. It's like you watch the football game, proverbial football game, and the teams are saying the only way we can win is that we have to have more members than the other side. So just get out there and vote. Not that we're going to get anything done in as far as your interest and improve the country, but just need to have more of our members in so we can vote. So great topic, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, so I love what you brought in there, and I want to put one asterisk next to what we're talking about this morning, and that's that there are. Part of this is my direct experience, and part of it is just my belief about human beings in general. There are members of Congress, generally whose names we don't know, both Republican and Democratic. We might know our own congressperson's name. Mine happens to be a woman named Johanna Hayes, and I get a weekly newsletter from her. And the nation will probably never hear her name, because she goes to work every day and she does things to best represent her district, which is the 5th congressional district in Connecticut. And she puts resolutions on the floor. She votes, and she's gotten some things done for her district. And that's the goal of of their House of Representatives to make sure that each little section of the country is well represented. You don't always get everything you want, but you represent your people. And I have no doubt, I've lived different places. When I was in New York, some of my Congress people were more famous, but I have no doubt that there are men and women, Republican and Democrat, even independent in Congress, whose names we don't know, who go to work every day, who do vote on things, and who just wish the clownery would stop. So I believe that that's true. Unfortunately, the Congress is controlled, right now, because of the slim majority that the Republicans have by these 8 people, and give or take 8 people, and they're what I would describe as either, I don't know if it's hard to tell what's ignorance and what's arrogance sometimes, but they're really clear that what they want to do is they want to get the Democrats back because of the impeachment of Donald Trump. So they want to try to impeach. And this is not funny, but it is funny because they tried to bring an order of impeachment against Joe Biden, and they had the committee for impeachment, and they embarrassed themselves. They didn't have anything that was an impeachable offense, and even the other Republicans who weren't part of the committee just said, stop. This is one of the most embarrassing things we've ever seen. So it's developmental. A lot of them are very me-centric. They're not even MAGA-centric. They're doing things for themselves, for their own personal egos and their own personal reputations. And the rest have this really closed view where they'll do anything. I think Matt Gaetz basically said, and he's the one that led the charge to oust Kevin McCarthy. Again, I didn't care for McCarthy. I thought he was a very weak person. I read one commentary on his style, which really rang true. If you look back at things he has said since he's been speaker, it said Kevin McCarthy will say whatever it takes to get himself through the current day. So he'll appease the Democrats, he'll appease the mainstream Republicans, he'll appease the MAGA folks if he can get through the next day. But he didn't really stand for anything, which I think is a fairly fair assessment of how he acted as the speaker. So I don't know, is that ignorance? He's not a stupid human being. He has said things out loud that, he puts the words in a good order. He can use language. But it's this kind of it seems as though many of our representatives have lost sight of the country. And because they want to make a name for themselves and run for the next office, whether it's going to be governor of their state or run for the Senate for their state. And they do things that are not in the best interest of the country, for sure, and sometimes not even in the best interest of their party. And as you said, you used the word frightened or increasingly frightened, and I agree with that. We're fortunate right now that there's different ways to say what I'm about to say. One of the things that typically brings nations together is a major tragedy or disaster. One of the ways to choose tragedy or disaster is to go to war. And what frightens me most is the lack of attention that real infrastructure issues and just general issues that the country has and need to be addressed aren't being addressed because the Congress is busy pointing their fingers at each other. But God forbid, we have Russia and Ukraine at war now, at Russia's aggression. We have Hamas attacking Israel, which seems like a suicide mission, which could spread throughout the Middle East. And it becomes increasingly harder for superpowers or former superpowers or almost superpowers to stay neutral in those situations. I mean, America has already put their flag in the sand on Israel's side because Hamas effectively made it. It was a terrorist attack. I would argue, as was Russia's initial barrage on Ukraine, and as was our attacking Baghdad in 2003. Just because a nation doesn't mean it's not a terrorizing or terrorist attack. But if these clowns, again, not every person in Congress deserves that moniker, but if the country ends up being faced with something really serious and immediate, and we really are already, I mean, climate change already is immediate, but they don't take it that way. But if we're really faced with an impending disaster, these are the people who are going to have the right to declare war if the president thinks that's necessary, because only Congress can declare war, even though we've fought wars for years without formal declarations. That's terrifying for me, because they don't seem to know what they're doing, and they just want to blame the other side. And they just make believe that, they get their $174K a year and all the benefits that come with it, and they act like buffoons. And again, not every member of Congress, but it's a scary time for sure.
Well, I'm glad you made the point to say not every member of Congress, because you're absolutely right. I can think of one representative that's from my area, and he's pretty known now because of the January 6 hearings and the impeachment hearings. Congressman Jamie Raskin. And I've gotten to know him, and I've seen him work on a local level when he was state senator here in Maryland. Campaign for him, will campaign for him. I know he's honorable. I know he has integrity. So you're right, not every member of Congress is. But the point is, I believe that most people are not looking to elect their elected officials to govern. They're looking to elect their elected officials to create or take away or prevent something from happening. And that's the reason they're electing them, because that's the climate that's created now. Is, the Republicans' mantra seems to be what we're not going to allow as far as changing of the culture, the times of America to happen. So they're locked in to make it happen. And, and you get people like Elon Musk, who is the richest man in the world, to come out and say, who's been voting Democrat pretty much most of the time he's been here in the United States, has now switched to the Republican side, saying that the Republicans are the only sane party. Because if you look at some of the identity politics that we're faced with, the Republicans seem to err on the side of things that seem to be commonplace. And most people are comfortable with commonplace. So they're going to elect those officials regardless of where their stance on other political issues. But as long as they're in line with me when it comes to commonplace issues, such as trans issues, such as what they believe as far as what's being taught in schools, as long as they build a border wall, immigration, as long as you're in line along those key issues, then this person gets elected. And to your point, this person may not have the knowledge and the capabilities to govern well, but they have their opinion and their flag as far as what's not going to happen under their watch here in America. And then Donald Trump has created the environment in which people can say what they're going to say and lie blatantly. That is acceptable to lie when you're caught red-handed and stand on that lie. He's created an atmosphere that this is the way you can now take politics to another level. I mean, we've always helped, at least in my circle and things that I've read, people always say politicians always lie. That's always been the case. I've never heard people say that they truly believe they're politicians. But now the lie is blatant. It's like it's clearly in your face. We see Matt Gaetz get charges for dating underage girls and investigations upon that. So it's so much scandal, so many issues, yet still we have to, as a citizenry, have to trust that these individuals in Congress are going to govern correctly. And we see they're not. They're not governing correctly. The fact that, to me, that the audacity to say, and I would love to see one representative say this, that if we don't get this government funded for at least 2 years, then I won't take a salary until we do. That's what I want to see, that kind of stance to say we got to stop putting government workers, military people every month at risk of worrying about whether or not they're going to be able to get paid and still receive a salary, and whether certain government offices will still be open. That to me should be the number one priority of Congress right now, is resolving that issue. And then for Matt Gates to sit and say, well, no, right now we got to get Kevin McCarthy out and not even have a speaker. So you can't even vote on that until they get a person in office. And then right now there's a divide in the Republican Party. They don't even know who they want in office. So this may take some time, which means that November comes around, it's going to come quickly. The government could be shut down just based on people's feelings of, I got to be right and you're wrong, and I'm going to stand on my rightness. So, and everything you said about war and bringing war together, you're right. Historically, that has always been how America has been united. I never felt more, I would say, of an American feeling as an American citizen accepted. And the only time I felt that way was during 9/11. After 9/11, and then that feeling of everyone's coming together, we got to go out and get those. So that I felt unity for about maybe 6 weeks, and then we went back to not feeling very patriotic and not feeling very welcome, and so on and so forth. So I'm saying all this to say it and say that I'm a person that believes that the systems have to come down. I don't believe you can change a system that's corrupt, because it's built to be corrupt from the very beginning. So you can't change a system that was designed to be corrupt. You have to just do away with it. Do away with it and create new systems. And unfortunately, I think this is what's going to happen. I think that we're going to have to get to a point of understanding that changes or new systems will have to be created. But before they are created, there's going to be some pain, there's going to be some suffering. And I think that's what we're experiencing. That's what we're witnessing right now. I don't think we can sustain where we've been and still recover and get back to a Congress that really governs based off political norms. I don't think that's going to happen again, unless something significantly happens that's going to really cause a great divide. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that's going to be, but I do know that has to happen, because I just don't see any political person. Biden is not someone who's going to unite the people. If Trump wins, he's not going to unite the people. I don't see anyone else who can run that may come up out of the blue over the next 6 months to a year that can stand up to challenge either one of those men on either side, being someone that can unite the people and put us in a different direction. So it's like we are literally on a Titanic headed directly to the iceberg, and everybody sees it. And some people are saying, well, the iceberg is the best thing because right now this ship is just so corrupt, we need to crash into it and start over again. And some people are saying, well, no, that's suicide. We need to correct the ship and steer the ship away from this iceberg. But I think everyone can see that right now we're headed towards the proverbial iceberg for sure.
Yeah, and we have, our leadership in many ways are on the deck and they're playing music. They're the dance band on the Titanic, and they're, as though it's not going to happen. It's frightening. But a couple of things I want to just comment on. I appreciate you saying them. This idea of voting for the commonplace, whatever people feel is common, and historically, there was a time when the commonplace meant owning slaves in America. There was a time when women couldn't vote. That was commonplace. There was a time after slavery was ended where it was commonplace to have Jim Crow laws and segregation, especially, but not only in the South. So we can look historically at, there are always people who want to keep the status quo or the commonplace. They tend to be known as conservatives. Conservatives didn't want to end slavery. Conservatives didn't want to end Jim Crow. Conservatives didn't want to give women the right to vote. Progressives did that. Now, do progressives always get it right? No. Now, the argument I make, though, is if you're conservative, and I'm just going to use conservative as, trying to keep things kind of the way they are. There's different ways to speak about being conservative in terms of fiscal conservatism or social conservatism, but it's more like the status quo, the commonplace. We know how this is, let's keep this. Whereas the progressives say, we know how this is, it needs to be changed, let's try this. So progressives never know exactly how to fix the thing that they're trying to fix. By definition, how do you do it? I don't know, we haven't done it before. Conservatives kind of know what they want to keep. So sometimes the progressive move takes one or two wrong attempts to get to what actually does work. So that's one piece for me right now. The second piece is going back to a speaker for the House, the more immediate piece. The two guys who are getting the most attention for speaker, one is Jim Jordan, and he was on the front lines of Stop the Steal. Like, he was one of the guys who was saying that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. I mean, he was holding the signs, he was, leading rallies and stuff. So that's one. The second guy is Steve Scalise, who's from Louisiana, who God bless him in one regard, he was injured in the shooting in D.C. several years ago at the congressional baseball game. He was seriously injured, but he's back. But he has actually said these words that his political stance is very similar to that of David Duke's, but without all the baggage.
Right.
So these are the two options. Like, I'm hoping somebody else is going to emerge, but a guy who's aligning himself with a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, and the guy who was, at the forefront of Stop the Steal, despite all of the evidence that as Christopher Krebs said, the director of national cybersecurity.
You still there, Reggie? Your screen looks frozen right now. I think we may not have resolved all our technical issues today thus far. You still with me, Reggie? Well, bear with us.
Trump administration.
Okay. Reggie, you're freezing your screen here. Again, you're frozen. So I don't know if you can hear me. And you're back. That image.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I removed your frozen image and you popped up against another. So you're working again now. So
okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's probably either a supporter of Steve Scalise or Jim Jordan who did that. So those are the two options for Speaker of the House of Representatives. And that's frightening. Now, it's good. It's going to be a Republican just based on numbers, obviously. But if that's the best that the party has to offer, a Stop the Steal guy or a guy who aligned himself with David Duke, less the white hood. And as I was saying, when we got cut off, when the signal got cut off, for saying that the 2020 election was the most secure in American history, Christopher Krebs, who was part of the Trump administration, got fired by the president. Because he basically said, look, all 50 states, all the secretaries of state say that there was no stealing, there was no fraud. And so he fired the guy for telling the truth. I don't know why I smile when I say that, because it's so ludicrous, I guess, but that's terrifying. That really is terrifying. And tens of millions of people still say they will, if Donald Trump can somehow become the candidate, they will vote for him again. a guy with no service in his lifetime. Never served the country, not in the military, not in not-for-profits, not in public service in the political realm. Did everything he could to show off his wealth and build his own personal kingdom. Painted the walls gold, made believe he had real gold in his Trump Tower in New York City, and proved he knew nothing about running a large organization at scale as president while he was president. Everything from the COVID crisis to his comments about the track of a hurricane to trying to extort certain behaviors, information about Joe Biden's son from the president of Ukraine in order to send Ukraine military aid. I mean, across the board, he did things that no Republican and no Democrat would ever do as president of the United States, other than him. And yet tens of millions of Americans think he'd be a good idea to be president for another 4 years. But that might be the iceberg you're talking about. I mean, I hope it's not. I don't think he has enough votes to win. He has enough support for another violent outbreak should he become the candidate and lose again. I mean, that's a possibility, I think. But I don't think there are enough people in this country that would, he lost to Biden by 8 million votes, just about 8 million votes. I don't think he has the votes to win.
Well, I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yeah.
I keep coming up with different analogies to describe the current state that we're in. But I know you might think I'm kind of crazy, and I know you're definitely going to strongly disagree with me when I say this next statement. But I'm almost looking forward to something happening, just from the standpoint that I liken America to a body, human functioning body, and we eating bad food constantly. We don't exercise, we eat bad food, and we don't take care of ourselves. We're not getting enough sleep at night. And it's inevitable that something is going to happen to us health-wise down the road, right? And we're just getting worse. We're just getting heavier. And now there's the potential that we have a cancer growing in our body. And it's like, maybe the cancer is going to cause us to finally stop doing all the bad eating, the lack of exercise, the lack of attention to our bodies, and focus on something to at least correct that ship, to make ourselves become much more mindful of our health, become more health aware. And that's what I'm seeing right now. To your point about Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise, it's like, it's crazy it may sound, but I really want Steve Scalise to win, mainly for the reason of I want the energy that he's going to bring, the corruption, the evil, the hate. I want that exposed. I want that out there. I don't want it subtle anymore. I don't want it, nowadays people can be racist and say they're not racist. I don't want that anymore. I want, if you're going to be racist, stand up and admit it. Hold true to that. I want those days. Of course, I don't want racism, period. But if you are going to be racist, I want you to stand on it. I want you to admit it. I want you to live in it and let the people who identify with you and align with you roll with you. That's we need to get that exposed so we can really start to deal with what it really is. That way, when we see the bills that he's gonna sponsor and what he's gonna allow to get pushed through the House, it's gonna be clear. So now he says, I'm a perfectly aligned with David Duke without the baggage. So we know what to expect from him, as opposed to Jim Jordan, who won't say that. But to me, I believe still we're a similar alignment. I mean, definitely as a person who doesn't care about women's rights, as we saw from his high school coaching wrestling days. So I think it's time for people to wake up is where I'm going with this. People are going to have to wake up. People are going to have to become more politically aware. People are going to have to become more politically active. And I say aware before active, because everyone always talks about just go out and vote, just go out and vote. And it takes more than that. You have to understand who you're voting for, why you're voting for an individual, and become more politically aware about what each candidate is talking about. Because if not just voting, I mean, because everything laid out about Trump is true. You're absolutely right. And it's, you even scratch the surface, to be honest. Excuse me. But then we look at Biden, you know, if I was someone who was of Hispanic, descent, and we voted for Biden because he said that he was going to stop the border wall and he was going to, do all these things to advance our agenda. We put him in office for that reason, and now you find out he's going to continue building the border wall because you said the money is already allocated. You don't care to hear that. That's not, whether the money is there or not is not justification in your eyes. If you're the person who's going to be impacted by that, you're like, well, just let the money go to waste. I mean, there's tons of uh, wasted money in the government. That's not the first time that money's ever been wasted in the government. So to use it as a justification to say we're going to build another 20 miles of border wall because the money's allocated there and there's nothing I can do, that just sounds like a cop out. And Biden has done that several times to the people who elected him. And that wavering that he does is such an issue. That's why I think it's going to be a problem when it comes to voting. Folks are going to feel that. See, you know, one thing you will say about Trump is that, yeah, he's definitely out for himself. And I'm not advocating for Trump. I'm not going to vote for Trump. But I'm just saying that he doesn't clearly dictate that wavering of back and forth. He doesn't say, okay, I'm going to not vote. I'm going to build a wall to get elected and then find reasons not to build a wall. Now, he couldn't get the wall built. He lied about getting the wall built. Because I believe mainly because he didn't understand how the government worked and he thought he could just, as president, get the wall built, even though he said Mets going to pay for it. But Biden is clearly saying whatever he wants to say for one position, like student loan debt. Again, another thing that he said he would get done and didn't get done. Now, again, you can say, well, that's not his fault. Congress didn't vote for it. Supreme Court even shut it down. But yet still, you ran on that platform. That's something that people felt was needed, something that people resonated with. Some people voted for you just for that reason, and then they didn't get it. They got the short end of the stick again. And so to get another 4 years of Biden's wavering, short end of the stick. So that's what I'm saying. It's like literally, an expression that's always been said between, the voting for the lesser of two evils. But it's like literally, I'm choosing between getting bit by the alligator who's going to eat me and roll me around in the water, or I'm going to get bit by the snake and let the venom slowly kill me. But either way, I'm going to get bitten by some, wild animal, and I don't want to get bitten by either one. But that's where it seems like we have to choose between, because you're not getting away without getting bit, So that's just how I feel. Is that's how people feel, and I think that's going to impact the polls. And my final piece on this is they say that the only way a Republican can really win, and I'm sure there's other conditions that govern this as well, but one of the key conditions is that 96% of blacks must vote for Democrats in order for a Democrat to win. And I just don't think that this particular term, Biden's going to get 96%. I don't think that James Clyburn is going to be able to just come and be a saving grace like he was the first time, because now we've had 4 years of Biden, and a lot of people are just not happy with Biden at all. And he can't just come along and say, well, he had to know to make that statement, you're not black if you don't vote for me. And you've locked up more black people than Trump could if he tried for the next 3 years. So it's like you have the audacity to come out and make that statement with your track record. So it's like, literally, like I said before, I wrap up by just saying that which one do I want to get bit by, the snake or the alligator?
Yeah. So going back to how you began, thinking that I was going to disagree with you with regard to, wanting Scalise to win and showing what's true, just put it out there, racist. So I don't necessarily disagree with that, because I mean, that's the essence of the chapter 10 in the book. It's actually called The Gift, how one man's shadow could help heal America. And the premise was that if people saw the ignorance, arrogance, greed, violence, excess, all of that in Donald Trump, and it's there. I mean, you can see it. If you're willing to look, it's there. If you make believe it's not there, I can't help you. But it's there. And that's the idea of making shadow visible, from in a psychological sense. What I'm making believe isn't there, we put it out there so everybody can see it. You can see it in Donald Trump. What we discovered was half the country looked at Donald Trump, and I'm saying half just as a kind of general midpoint, and were horrified by him, especially people who didn't know who he was. I grew up in the greater New York City area. I've known who he was since I was in high school, maybe college. I think he's 8 years older than I am. But what we found was half the country liked him. They liked his arrogance. They liked his subtle racism. They liked his greed. They aspired to be, to make the art of the deal. A book he didn't even write. It was written about him. And so what we're discovering is we're not discovering, but we know Trump, and I think this is probably would be true with Scalise as well. He's not creating the problems. He's representative of the problems. In other words, the country's shadow, I would argue, created Donald Trump and Steve Scalise and people like them. Not that they're equal or identical. And the issue, even though you and I are, ranting on the politicians because they deserve it in many ways, we vote. So, you get the democracy you deserve. And what we're looking at is the democracy that a majority of people in the United States want, based on the vote. So the real issue, which is a hard one to reconcile, is what do you do to get tens of millions of people, not just the several hundred in Congress, to become more compassionate, more aware. We do that in a different order: more aware, more compassionate, more merciful, kinder. Because if, as a nation, we do that, the politicians who want to be in office will have to follow suit. Theoretically, anyway. Because of lobbying and corporations, it's not as easy as I'm making it sound. But that's the real issue. So I don't know how much good. I don't think Steve Scalise, Speaker of the House, will do us any more good than Donald Trump did as president. Just because you could see what was, who he was. A lot of people kind of like it. So I don't disagree with you. I just don't know that it's really that helpful.
No, I don't think it'd be. Yeah, I don't think it'd be helpful.
Right. Yeah, I hope you're right.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be very helpful. I think he'd be very. He would be very problematic. I would say he'd be very. Can't believe I'm getting the words I'm going to use here, but I believe he's going to force the situation to come to a head. That's where I'm getting at, and that's what I want. I don't want to lie, as they say, and turn the heat up. I want it to boil. I don't want it to slowly just sit in the warm water and just cook slowly. Let's turn it up. Let's get it out the way, and let's deal with what we got to deal with. But I know we've reached a part of the show where we want to go ahead and bring a solution to today's, and you kind of stepped into some of that before you paused. So I want to let you continue to walk us down on how Congress and we as a people can get Congress back in line, so to speak.
So because elections are only depending on what we're voting for, every 2 years, every 4 years, with senators every 6 years, that's hard to change. So what I would like to recommend, and this is for people on the left and on the right, in the middle, what if you use your time during the day, whether you go to use it on Twitter, or X, because that's important to just use the correct word, right. YouTube, network television, however you feed your political and news needs. I would recommend stopping that. Not even listening to the other side. That can be helpful for a little while, but usually it just makes you more angry. And find something that speaks to a bigger picture that's not particularly political, that speaks to kindness, that speaks to compassion, and see if you can grow mercy, kindness, and compassion in yourself. To really kind of make that move from, if you're stuck in a me-centric view, see if you can make the move to an us-centric view. If you're stuck in an us-centric view, see if you can make the move to an all-of-us-centric view. If you like intellectually rigorous things, take a look at the Consilience Project, or just go to find Daniel Schmachtenberger, and who has this amazing grasp of these issues on a global scale, not just in America. You might have to listen a few times to learn his language, but he's brilliant. And he's not taking political sides. He's showing what is. He's saying, this is true. Look at what's happening, and what it's going to take to correct it. But stop feeding your biases or taking in that which is going to make you angry by listening to the other side's biases, and start doing things that grow kindness, compassion, not idiot compassion where you're making believe everything is okay, but that allow you to begin to learn how you can be better in navigating with other human beings. So it doesn't matter which politician it is. If they're pointing fingers and making things worse, you become aware of that. Because the political, last thing I'll say is the paid news celebrities, not journalists, but those people who are the famous people on both the left and the right, they're not making anything better. They use the same tactics and strategies, even though their ideologies and their content is different. But they're just, nod, wink, wink. We know what's best, so we listen to them. If we agree with them, we feel good. Yeah, I'm on that side. Stop listening to that shit. All right. Find the people who are just speaking generally about goodness in humanity and what the world really needs, and use your time there and stop listening to the opposing bullshit that both sides are feeding you. So that's what I would recommend.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for today's topic. Definitely appreciate our listening audience for listening. We ran short on time, so unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get into who we believe are our examples of being more fully human in this episode, because we really need to cut it off. But definitely appreciate everyone for listening. For those who bear with us and hung around until we got things worked out, we're grateful for that. And until next Monday at 10 a.m., I look forward to seeing you, Reggie, and everyone else, our listening audience. Take care, everyone.